Shalom Aleichem. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
We're supposed to finish before you start.
Huh?
We're supposed to finish before you start.
Okay.
Nice.
Do you want me to start again?
I got more than
Shalom Aleichem. It's good, it's good, it's good. There's no clock back there. That's dangerous. There's no clock in this building. We've hit the timeless. It's a good place for me. I like it there. And we're after Yom Kippur, and we're here the next night, and that says a lot about you. Because you're here, and you could be anywhere in the world right now. Maybe not anywhere in the world, but you could be other than here. And here you are, come together. And just the fact that we're in this room together, and there's a group of people who want to come and get spiritually connected as we're getting ready for Sukkot, like Dayenu, like if that's it, if we just came in this room to share our consciousness together and we're weaving in and out of this experience, we've done good. So, again, thank you. It's a schus to be here. And I was thinking a lot about, and please, I realize that I speak softly, so if you can't hear me there, you'll tell me, yeah? You're good? Okay. I spent my entire teenage years in a rock band, some of you know, and so there was always a microphone in front of me. So I didn't have to learn how to project. Wasn't part of my curriculum. So we do the best we can. So I was thinking about the different ideas and thoughts as we're sitting here, getting ready for what I think it's the microcosm of our life. I really believe that Sukkot, whether you call it Sukkot or Sukkot, I don't care where you come from, it is if I were to ask you, and we don't have to go through everyone in the room, but I think if I were to ask you, what are the feelings you have or the thoughts you have around the holiday itself, I would be hearing things like happiness and family and unity and joy and fun and nature and, like lots of, you could throw some more at me, right? But homey, it's like, yeah. Bugs. Okay, maybe outside the bugs, or maybe with the bugs, actually. They're like, if you were to think about like what's the purpose of life, you get a lot of the same themes, right? Like happiness and joy and family and oneness and connection, and it's very much related to essence of life. And all of the Svarim speak about how Sukkot is essentially what we're going for, the ideal world. And I think of Sukkot almost like the launching ground. It's like the beta program to our year. Like, how do we want the year to look? Like, we spent 10 days working out what we want to shift inside, and now we've got to go out and just live it and be it. And who are you going to be when you're actually at the table with everyone? And who are you going to be when, things are going wrong, but it's still Sukkot, right? It's like a regular week, and we're experiencing life. And what kind of joy are we going to bring into our experiences as we live? So I was recently in Los Angeles. Actually, I spent a long time in the Happy Minyan. I don't know if anybody here knows. Yeah, I spent time there, which is kind of like the LA Shirat David Minyan. Yeah. And the morning of that Friday morning, before I spent the Shabbos there, I was speaking at a certain convention, and I had a really awesome experience. By the end, I felt like I was in a Baal Shem Tov story. I got up and I ordered the Uber to this convention, and I had to take two. I had to take one to my camera guy, and then I was going to pick him up, and then I was going to take a second one to the convention center, which is about a half an hour away. And so I called the Uber, I sent the app, and then he shows up, and he showed up in a black Tesla. I felt like, okay, Hashem, you take care of me, you come to America to teach Torah, you put me in a nice caravan, and I read the name of the driver, and it was Jorge. You know how to pronounce that? Jorge. Good. So I did too, because I'm from Southern California, and he was surprised when I opened the door and I said Jorge, and he was like, he gets it, and he looked at me and he said Moshe, and I was more surprised, because in America people call me either Mash, and that's for real. I'm Mash. or Moshe. But Moshe is like so far away. So I had to like find, when I actually gave my TED talk, there was an Israeli woman there, and she came over to me because everybody kept mispronouncing my name, and she said, tell them your name is Motion without the N, and then they get it. And so she gave me this for people. But anyway, I opened the door and he said, hi, Moshe. And I was so happy. I was like, oh, yeah, hi, thank you. And we sat down and we start driving. And on the way, maybe 10, 15 seconds in, he says, you know, you have a beautiful name. I was like, that's so nice. So do you, Jorge. And he said, you don't understand. I love the Tanya. So I thought that was hysterical. So I'm like half laughing and I'm like, me too, Jorge. That's so funny. And he goes, you don't understand. I love the Rambam. So I said, Jorge, are you Jewish? And he said, not at all. So I said, why are you learning Tanya and the Rambam? And he said, how could you not? He said, have you read it? He's like, they're my favorites. He's like, I have my Chabad.org app. And I said, wait, stop. Why are you learning Torah? And he said, oh, that's a funny story. He said, my wife left me 9 months ago. And that she was interested in that, around the time that she left. And I typed in Torah and I found this thing called Chabad. And he said, and then I started listening to Rabbi Gordon Shear every day. He said, Rabbi Gordon Shear. Every day he's listening to the Tanya. And I am like enamored. I'm like, wow, Hashem, you are too good. This is amazing. And he said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm here to teach Torah. And I said, but actually, I'm getting out here. But I said, if you'll just let me, like, end it, and then I'll reorder the Uber, I'd love for you to be the one to take me all the way there instead of me waiting and catching someone else if you're willing to wait a few minutes. He said, no. And he pulled out his phone and he turned his phone off. And at that point, I was halfway sure I was in a horror movie about to go like wrong. And he said, I won't let you order another Uber because I want to take you there and for you to teach me Torah the whole way. And I said, Jorge, I can't do that. I can't take your money. I was like, you're driving me around like, there's at least the gas. He said, no, you don't understand. I said, what don't I understand? He said, I'm a millionaire. I said, you're my Uber driver. He said, yeah, I do this because I just had an exit recently from my business and I don't have much to do with my time and I meet very interesting people. He's like, will you please teach me Torah on the way to your conventions? So I was like, okay, Shem, I give up. You can't make this stuff up. It was unbelievable. And so my camera guy gets in the car and I said, Zach, you're not going to believe this. And he said, what? And I tell him about Jorge. And Jorge's like, yeah, man, it's amazing. It's like, I love the Torah. So we're talking and we're schmoozing and we're having this amazing, and he just kept saying, he's like, we got to do more mitzvahs. He's like, we got to do more mitzvahs. Like, the world needs more mitzvahs. He's like, and how come the world hasn't figured out tzedakah yet? And yeah, it was amazing. It was like an out-of-body experience, like really, really moving and powerful. As we got closer to the center, he said, I have to show you guys this clip of this particular shliach who was speaking in Congress about the hostages. And we said, okay. And he puts on the clip, and it is this very powerful clip of the shliach speaking about the power of unity and that even though we're different, we don't have to be separate, and it's really beautiful. And I noticed Jorge saying it by heart with it, like with this thing. So I'm like completely on the floor by the time we get there. And I said, Jorge, do you have any desire to be Jewish? And he said, no. I said, why did you grab onto this? He said, my life was dysfunctional. My life had no order. My life was chaos. And then I found Torah. And he's like, and Torah puts order in the world. And Torah gave me purpose. And Torah shows me that there's a way that life is supposed to be lived. So I'm moved at this point. My camera guy's like, what about being a Ben Noach? Like, have you thought about that? Like, have you thought about being a Noachite? And he just looks at him and he goes, I'm Chabad. And then we got out of the camera. But, the level of hashgacha obviously is amazing, but what I walked away with was we're all looking for order, and we're all looking for something to put the world together for us. And it doesn't matter if you're sitting in Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh, or if you're Jorge in Southern California. We're looking for something to put all the pieces together, because the world does look like chaos a lot of the time. And it doesn't matter if it's chaos from the news and the things that we see out there, or the fact that, you know, bedtime takes 3 hours, right? It doesn't matter if it's, you know, something with a spouse or it's your bank account. There's chaos everywhere, right? Wherever you look, you can find it if you want, and it becomes our voda to get back in, to retune ourselves in something that gives us order, direction, joy in the dysfunction, in the disorder, to recognize that there's a higher order to all of this. And I think that's what we're doing now. I think we spent the last 10 days, more or less, remembering there's an order, there's a reason, there's a purpose, there's a guidance, there's something more. But the first 10 days of Tishrei are actually quite intense. Like really, it's an intense time. It's an intense energy. I actually felt Hashem did us, I mean, aside from the miracle on miracles of 181 missiles not landing, right, in Eretz Yisrael, like on top of all of that, I usually find that Rosh Hashanah has a certain, I think that's the word, a certain intensity to it. And it was almost dulled by the fact that we had to go through the intensity the night before. Like, it was so intense the night before, we were like, okay, the king, the Abba, you know, like, that was easy. Like, Rosh Hashanah is easy after you go through such intensity. And it's not just like, oh, it was intense, and we witnessed open miracles. You come into Rosh Hashanah like, we're good. Kadosh Baruch Hu is taking care of us. Life is okay, but it's still an intense time. So I think everybody kind of has a sigh of relief after Yom Kippur. And it's like, okay, now we can spend the next 4 days moving, and literally moving our lives into a sukkah. And so what are we doing? The world is called an olam. And olam is the greatest game of hide and seek, right? Olam comes from the word he'elam, right? Hidden. And sometimes we see it and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we find it and sometimes we don't. But it's the game. That is the game. And so Chazal gives 3 different names for Olam Haza while we're here, while we're in this world. There are different ways that Chazal related to this life that we're all living, which, thank God, we're all living. like we're here. I was talking to a group this morning, and we were talking about how, let's just remember, we made it. Right? We were born, and we're here. We're having a life on a rock floating through space. Like that. That's already good. Like Dayenu, lots of good, right? Even when things aren't going the way that we would want them to, like we're still here having this conversation. That's good. But Chazal say Olam Haz is dark. There's a darkness here. It's our job to bring the light, but it's naturally called Laila. And so the Gemara on Shabbos says it's like Olam Haba is like the day and Olam Haz is like the night. It's like Laila. Why is it like Laila? Because it's what happens at night. Like, what is night? It's dark. And when it's dark, we lose perspective. When it's dark, we don't have a clear perception of things. So even though we're looking at something, the Ramchal and Mesilas Yesharim says one of the problems with night is you can be outside and someone can be walking towards you and you can be afraid, even though they're your friend. But if it's dark and there's not a light out, it can create fear, but it's an illusion, right? Because if you knew it was your friend, you would never be afraid of that. And that's kind of the world we're in, where it's really easy to fall back into fear and to forget that it's all working together, right? That is itself part of Olam Hazeh. Thinking about Erev Rosh Hashanah, I know that being in the mamad with my kids, and they were very afraid, right? As parents, we work really hard to keep a higher mind, but at the end of the day, they bring out the fear in you also because they're so afraid. Like, and it's real. And it is real. There's things to be afraid of, right? But it's because there's moments where things feel dark. It's moments where, okay, so now we're in Katnas, a smaller, more limited perspective. The Zohar has two other names for this world. One of the words are Alma de Shikra, right? A world of lies. I like to think of it as it's a world of illusions, right? Things that look real, but they're not real. And it's not that this isn't real. This is very real, right? In Asiya, in this world, it's a real cup. What's not real is our projections. We have all these projections onto reality of what we think is real. And so what happens is we come into this world and we very quickly lose touch. So within the first 5 years, we start fading. And by the time we're an adult, it's very hard to remember that natural sense of joy and peace and safety that a child feels naturally in most circumstances, right? Barring, any real trauma, a child up until a certain age, they just feel naturally joyful and safe and happy to be here. And unless something's actually physically bothering them, they're okay. And then they learn, which is another way of saying we all learn and learned, about the scary stuff and about who we're supposed to be to get attention and how life is supposed to be for us to feel okay with life. And what are all the have-tos and the supposed-tos and the shoulds and the needs and the addictive mental tendencies that we start projecting onto the world for things to be okay. And that's Alma de Shikra, because it's not true. Because we're okay right now. In this moment, we're okay. And the vast majority of moments that we're alive in this world, everything's a beautiful gift. There are times where things are challenging and hard. And it's our attachment to these really early onset patterns of seeing things. And Chazal called it, like throughout all of history, Chazal said, we have a Yetzer Hara. We have a natural tendency to see things as broken and separate. And therefore, we want to grab and try to fix our lives. We're fixers. We all want to fix things, right? So either we're trying to fix things or hide from fixing things. But that's what we're doing because we assume that either we or the world is broken. And so we're constantly trying to fix ourselves in the world. And there's nothing wrong with trying to make the world better or ourselves better. But if it becomes an addictive tendency, right? We become compulsive about it. So we start missing the world that's right in front of us. So that's Alma de Shikra. And why do we do that? So there's another language that the Zohar speaks about, which is Alma de Peruda, a world of separateness, where things feel and are experienced as separate, broken, and which is fine, because that is part of Olam Hazeh. Like I sit here, and you're sitting there, and you're sitting there, and it feels like we're all separate, but that's not true. Because everything's connected, and everyone's connected, and no two things are happening on this planet that aren't sharing a unified source. But it doesn't look that way, and it doesn't feel that way, and that's why things feel like chaos. Things feel like chaos because I don't see, I can't perceive how all the networks, just like we have these mass amounts of neural networks that are firing all the time and connecting everything in our brains. That's happening cosmically on the entire planet all the time, and not just on the planet, but in the entire universe, and not just in the universe, but in all the universes, right? So there's this incredibly powerfully deep reality that we're privileged to like just the outer layer. So everything looks very separate, and from a place of separateness, that's what gives rise to all the fear and desire in our life. And that's what gives rise to all the ego in our life. And that's what gives rise to Anochi. Right? The Baal Shem Tov says that the main thing that keeps us separate from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Anochi, the I, the me that thinks I'm separate from God, separate from others, the separateness. Anochi omeid bein Hashem u'beinechem. It's the I that stands between you and God. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu said. Anochi omed bein Hashem u'beinechem. The I is what keeps us feeling, thinking, and believing that we're separate. And when we're separate, that means we're vulnerable. And when we're vulnerable, that means we're weak and small and in danger. And then our lives unfold in that way. And I hope it's not a downer. I'm starting with the beginning. Yeah, like this is our starting point, and hopefully we're moving in the right direction. The world covers up what's real. That's what it is. The world covers up what's real because there's something more real. Not that this is fake, but there's something more real. There's a line in a book that I appreciate, a book called A Course in Miracles, and it says, "Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God." I love that. It's just such a beautiful, simple way to put the whole sugya together. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Meaning knowing this, in realizing this, which is really it's a feeling realization. It's more than a thought, right? It's not thinking about something being true, but it's like an abiding presence of knowing that you don't have to worry about the things that are real, because no one can take that away from you. Because it's always going to be true, it's always going to be there. The Maharal says his definition of truth, or reality, is that which never changes. Says if it's true, it's always true. Truth is that which never changes. Says that's why it's an aleph, a mem, and a tuf. Aleph is the beginning letter, mem is the middle letter, tuf is the last letter. Means something that's true is always true. Beginning, middle, end, it's always there. And so you never have to worry about that. And then there are the things that are unreal, and those are the things that are constantly changing. They're always changing. You know what's always changing? Everything. In this world, everything's always changing. The only thing that's not always changing is the thing on the inside. Right? There's a part of us, the spark of us, the chelak alakah mimal, the neshama, the consciousness, the part of us that's experiencing the whole thing as it's happening, right? So if, the body you were in when you looked in the mirror when you were 7 years old is not the same body that you're in today. That's a fact. But the you who looked through those eyes is the same you, right? There's a part of you that's real. You never have to worry about that part of you. And then there's a part of you that's unreal, and don't give it too much thought. It doesn't really exist. It's transient. It's moving. Without jumping too far ahead, that's one of the reasons why we're leaving our homes to go into the sukkah, because the home is the illusion of stability. That's what the home is. And a sukkah is the reality of instability, that there are no stable structures in this world, that things are constantly moving, and we have to be okay with that. That part's okay, because the part that's real, which is the love that we experience, the love that we share with others, the deep connection that we have, that's real. That's there. That part's the unchanging. So how do we get there? And how do we tune back in to this wonderfully beautiful, powerful reality that's really there all the time? And it is the work of our life. It's not the work of a day, of a night. It's not the work of even one lifetime. This is the work of many lifetimes. And we're sitting here after thousands of years of people working through it, so we can be here to work through our next part of it, right? That's what we're doing. So there's a medrash that I've been thinking about a lot. The last couple of years, I've been thinking about it a tremendous amount. Avram Avinu, in the beginning of Parshas Vayera, famously, it gets really excited about bringing guests into his home, right? That's Parshas Vayera. We're excited. And everything he does, the Gemara recounts, the Psukim capture, and then the Gemara recounts, because he did this, there's going to be this certain reward and schar for the future of Am Yisrael. Because he did this, there's a different schar. Everything he did, right, and even how he did it. If he asked his son to do it, one of the things he asked Yishmael to go do, because he did it through a shliach. So there's going to be certain things that are going to be done through a shliach later on, as opposed to directly through God. Right? There's a whole list of things that Avram did, and later there was reward for. Well, one of those things, interestingly, was when they showed up, the malachim showed up, he put them under a tree. It says, "V'hishanu tachas ha'etz." He put them under a tree. And the Medrash Tanchuma says, because he put them under the tree, wow, because you did that, you're zocheh to the mitzvah of sukkah. So, the simple pshat is you gave them shade, you get the mitzvah of shade. Deep and inspiring. The Maggid of Mezrich was not thrilled with this understanding, and so he said that our understanding has to be deeper. It must be deeper, because it's actually not what the pasuk said. The pasuk didn't say he gave them shade. It says he put them under the tree. You can't even be in a sukkah under a tree. Like, that doesn't even work. So there must be something deeper going on. And he says, what's under a tree? Yes, that's directly under a tree. What's under the tree? Roots. And the Maggid of Mezrich says, what does it mean that he sat them under the tree? It means he made them meditate on what was under the tree. He made them sit and go deep and recognize that there are roots under the tree which are the source of life and energy for the thing that you see, even though you can't see them, and if you try to bring them out, you kill the thing on top. You can never actually see it while it's doing its job. And he said, that's what reality is. Reality is we have to find a way to get beyond the thing we can see and recognize that there's a source of energy, of light and love and connection that gives rise to all of this world, even though you can't see it, taste it, touch it immediately. Not right now. But if you allow yourself to go there, it changes the tree, changes your relationship with the whole experience on the surface. For that, Hashem says you get the mitzvah of sukkah. Because ultimately, that's what sukkah is about. It's not just about being in the shade because it's sunny, right? Although in Eretz Yisrael, it's actually very helpful. If you notice, it's been very hot. It's just really hot. Global warming is real. Yeah, is it? Yeah, it's actually really nice. I just spent 20 minutes outside before we started. Man, you could convince me. So, under the tree, we need to see beyond the surface. That's the main idea. The word sukkah itself has two meanings in Chazal, right? Sukkah means not beyond hut. The root of sukkah. Huh? Yes, exactly right. Yeah, sukkah comes. The first Rashi in Masechah Sukkah says that the sukkah comes from the word schach, right? Sukkah, sikech, which means to cover. So it's covering, which is the shade, right, from the sun. Like a mask is a masecha, right? So where the sukkah is it's a covering, it's a shielding. But deeper, the Avram Avinu had a wife named Sarah Imenu. Sarah had another name, Yiska. And Yiska means a couple things. Yes, it means princess, like a nesicha, like sukkah, right? So there's an aspect of royalty here. And it also means that she was soche beruach hakodesh. Soche means to see. It's a spiritual seeing. It's a deeper perception of reality. So even when things look one way on the surface, she saw a deeper reality. So a sukkah has both the meaning of to cover up, but also to reveal. And of course, the ideas are jointed because we say Shema every day, and the Sfarim say the reason we say the Shema every day is so we can connect to the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to see a world of perfect connection and perfect unity. And what do we do when we say the Shema? We cover our eyes. Why would you cover your eyes if you're trying to see everything together? The answer is sometimes you have to cover something up to reveal something deeper. We have to cover something up to see something truer in the world, because it's really easy to get distracted by Alma de Shikra. And it's really easy to forget about unity in Alma de Peruda. And it's really easy to not find God in a world that hides him. So what we do is we cover our eyes so we can see something deeper. So Sukkot is really an opportunity to walk away from the illusion of stability, the illusion of what this world offers us, and just go into something deeper. And it's a week where we get into this chamber of change, this chamber of opportunity to live and see a deeper life. And what's the main mitzvah of being in the sukkah? Huh? So interesting. So I was thinking about that a lot. That's the main way to do the Arba Minim, but it's not the main mitzvah of the sukkah. The main way to do the Arba Minim is in the sukkah. But what's the main mitzvah of sukkah? How do you Makayim mitzvah sukkah?
Well, live.
Just be. That's the mitzvah. And that's the way back. We have to get out of the mindset of I need to do in order for me to be okay. I need to do in order for me to be worthy. I need to do and prove myself to the world. And then I'll be good enough. And then my home will be good enough. And then my bank account will be good. And then I can do, and then the world will be, it's none of those things. Because those things will or won't happen. And that'll be fine. Because that which unreal doesn't exist. It either will happen or it won't happen, but that which is real couldn't ever be threatened, and yet we don't see it. We didn't allow ourselves to see it. Another line from that same book says, those who are seeking the light are merely covering their eyes, which is another really beautiful line that points to the same idea of like we're looking out there to give us something that's in here. And the whole idea, we just spent 10 days doing tshuva, which what is tshuva? Right? Tshuva is 10 days of really saying, all that stuff, that's not me. That's not me. That's not me. That's not me. Right? And Sukkot, now once we got through a lot of that's not me, Sukkot is just this is me. This is me. Here as I am, here now, perfect, whole, and good, here now, without needing to shift or change anything else. You can change if you want to. There's still stuff to do. There's still progress to go towards. But this is good. This is good. And so how do we do that? Right? If that's the vision, so then of course the question is, well, how? And it's a trick question because the answer is, if you're asking so, we're missing it because really just be. But we still have to ask how because we're so not used to being. We're so far away from being. Rav Dessler says the most amazing thing. He says, really, all of this and all of life is about finding ourselves. And he says, finding yourself can be done in one of three ways. It's an amazing thing. You think that the Baal Shem Tov said it, but Rav Dessler said it. It's amazing. He says the three ways to find yourself are either one, meditate. He's bodhidus, you have to meditate. Said if you're not meditating, he said, this is his language. You have to be sho'ef lihiyot velo la'asot velahasig. That means you have to shift your desire from achieving and doing to one of being. Rotze lihiyot, sho'ef lihiyot. He says meditation, being, and then he says be more in overflow than you are in taking from the world. Find yourself in service as opposed to taking. He says you'll find yourself if you go to those places. And that's really what we're doing. Right? That's what the sukkah is supposed to be. So how do we be a little bit more? This is maybe one of my favorite Torahs on the word sukkah and on what sukkah is, because I think it really points to the essence of everything. The Zohar says, many Sfarim point lots of really beautiful things out about Sukkot and the Chag and about the sukkah. But it says that the word sukkah itself, if you look at the first and the last letter, it says it spells the word has. You know what has means? Quiet. That's right. Extra points if you know the first time it came up in Torah. Oh, very good, very good. With Kalev. Vayahas Kalev es ha'am. Yeah. Kalev quieted the nation. So the Zohar, the Gra, the Ari, they all say that there's Has on the outside, and what's on the inside? The letters that are left are Chaf and a Vav. Chaf and a Vav. Good, 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 good. 26. Someone said 26, right? So it's the Shem Havaya. It's connection to God. When you quiet the noise on the outside, you find God on the inside, right? And that's the essence of the sukkah, right? The Zohar says the sukkah is like the teva of Noach. It's a place to go to get respite from the chaos of the world, to put things back together. And the way that you do that is finding quiet. And we have to find that quiet and to step away from the noise. And the noise isn't the noise of the street. All the noise is in here. All the noise is in here. Meaning, there's some noise out there. And if you have young kids, there's even more noise over there. But even that is really just here. That's all. It's all this, right? The whole thing, all of reality takes place inside of us. The whole thing takes place in our perspective, in our perception on reality. And to the degree that we're caught in our fears and projections on how things are supposed to be, there's even more noise. It gives rise to more of that. And the Maharal says that when the body is speaking, the soul is quiet. And when the body gets quiet, the soul can speak. Isn't it amazing? Amazing. He says that's the pshat in the Mishnah that says, I haven't found anything good for the body other than quiet. Right? That's because when you do that, then the body can do its job, which is to be a vessel for the soul. It allows us to be a vehicle for that higher consciousness to come through. But when we're so caught up in this, in the Alma de Shikra, in the Alma de Pura, it's very hard to hear. And the pasuk says, Lo barash Hashem. God's not found in the noise. Can't find God in the noise. So we have to look for some quiet. And we have to practice letting go of these phantom thoughts of who we're supposed to be and how things are supposed to be for me to be okay. Because at the root of it all, there's this feeling that I'm not okay. Or the world is not okay. And that's it. Like, you can boil life down to those two fundamental experiences. Either I'm not okay, or the world, i.e. someone or something around me, right, is not okay. And the whole avoda is the recognition that you are, we are, we're okay. Because even when we're not okay, it's okay to be not okay. That's also okay. Having a bad day, that's okay. Feeling down, that's okay. Feeling up, that's okay. It's all allowed. It's all part of the game. It's all part of the olam, the game of hide and seek. Right? We're supposed to go through all of it. I'll bring you a raya, a proof that we're supposed to go through all of it. Because we're going through all of it. So like it or not, like that's what we're supposed to do. How do I know? Because that's what we're doing. People say that we shouldn't use the word should. I think we shouldn't use the word should. There's only one time you can use the word should and it would be true. Do you know when that is?
You should just be.
Well, maybe. That's tricky. The one time I think you can say it, because what the word should is, ultimately, should is a judgment on reality. It's what I think about reality and how it's supposed to be. That's what the word should literally means. So the only time you can use it if it's defining reality. We should be sitting here. Yes, that's true. Now, if you feel like we shouldn't, or if you feel like you want to leave and you're stuck, you'll feel I shouldn't be here, and that's why you're in pain, right? That's how it works. Meaning, it's when your thought about how life is supposed to be is different than how life is that we feel pain. And the degree to which you think life is supposed to be different than how it is the degree to the pain. So it's not that there aren't things that are objectively challenging, right? My daughter was running into the house this afternoon and stubbed her toe. That objectively hurts. That is, but how the rest of the day goes, if the rest of the day is complaining about what happened at the door, that wasn't the door anymore, right? Because pain is inevitable, suffering is a choice, right? How much we give attention and weight to my underlying need for things to be different. And that's what it means to just be. To just be is another way of saying to allow yourself to be where you are and not need things to be different. And if you're sitting in the sukkah and you're sitting there and you feel like doing a meditation or reading a holy sefer, that's a beautiful thing. But if you're sitting there and you feel exhausted and tired and you could not imagine picking up a sefer, that is also a holy thing. And we get 7 days to actually practice being holy, doing nothing. Being holy, doing everything. And that's the beta for our life. We have to realize that's always true. That's why the last day we then go back into the home and it's still true. Like that didn't stop. It's not like you stopped being holy because the Sukkot ended. It's Shmini Atzeres. This year's going to be a very different kind of Shmini Atzeres, a very different kind of Simchas Torah. It's still holy. And then it's going to be Isru Chag. And then it's going to be October 28th. Right? It's going to be the end of, at some point, it's going to be after all of this. And most of us, most of the time, are going to look back and be like, that was so good. I wish it was still like that, because that was so beautiful and loving and connected and joy. And like, we should have more of that. And the truth is, like, you can. You can have more of that right now. But we have to let go of thinking that that was the only good, because we do the same thing. I always find it funny when we speak about connecting to Hashem, because Hashem is so big. So, I mean, it's like I sit in this room, I look at you, I feel like I'm connecting with Hashem, right? And when I'm driving home, you can feel that also. You certainly feel that when you're in shul, but then you're in shul, sometimes you don't feel that at all, right? Like, connecting to Hashem is a big, big idea. But fundamentally, the Leshem says the path to this letting go, the path to getting past the addictive mind that has these compulsive running around is through presence. Right? That's really where it is. It's really in finding our way to being more here now, and that's not like a quip or like a nice phrase that we can throw around. I think kind of like in the spiritual space, it's thrown around a lot of like be present, be in the now. Here we are. Actually, before I go down that road, I'll just share with you. I was once giving a shir somewhere, and we were speaking about being present and being in the now. And someone said, "Can you tell me how? Can you just give me like the practical to it?" And I said, "Okay." So I looked around the room and I picked up someone and I said, his name was David. I said, "David, what does it feel like to be you right now?" And he looked at me with his eyes really open. And he said, "I don't know." So I said, "Okay, wait. Not such a hard question. You don't have to make anything up. What does it feel like to be you right now?" And he said, "I don't know." So I said, "Let's make it easier." I was like, "Rub your hands together." He rubbed his hands together. And I said, "What do your hands feel like right now?" And he said, "I don't know." And at this point, I'm sure like he must have crazy anxiety. Like I've now put him in a really bad position. So I had to find a way to get out of it. And I was like, "What does it feel like in the room right now? Temperature?" He goes, I'm warm." So the guy next to him says, "Good answer, David. Good." And I changed the subject and we went on to something else, and we spoke about presence somewhere else another time. But the next week there was another shir in the same place, and this guy David comes up to me right before the talk, and he comes over and he says, "Rabbi, I'm so sorry." I said, "Why are you sorry?" He said, "Last week at the shir." I said, "Yeah." He's like, "I was so high." He's like, you asked me, what does it feel like to be me? And he's like, and I blasted out of my body. I was like, he's like, then you asked me about my hands, and he's like, and there was light coming out of my hands. I was like, it's okay. He's like, I don't normally do that. He's like, I had a bad day. This guy gave me this thing. So I was like, right. So that's not the doorway to presence. Made for a great story, but I felt really bad for him. But it is sometimes simple things. It's simply that, right? To sit there, and lots of different practices, and meditation means different things to different people, and Hisbodedus means different things to different people, but it means letting yourself go there and letting yourself feel what's in your shoes. We have feet, and letting yourself feel your body and letting yourself feel your emotions and letting yourself go to these places. And if it's joyful, let that be. And if it's painful, you allow that to be too. It's really a beautiful, deep practice of allowing everything that is. And what happens when you do that is you start to experience more and more of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Because Kadosh Baruch Hu, God is all that is coming through you. I was once running a trip, and on the trip, I remember one of the madrichim saying something that like really struck me. I remember exactly, sometimes you have these moments and they're vivid and like they just leave an imprint in your mind. And it's funny because some things you want to remember and you can't. And then the most random things are stuck in here. You're like, why? Why is that the thing? This one seemed important. And he was standing there and he said, we're sitting here and we're talking, and we're telling all these people about prayer and talking to God. He's like, but it's the funniest thing, God never talks back. And he was serious. He's like, I do it because I guess that's what we're supposed to do. And I could not understand him. Because isn't everything Hashem talking back? Isn't that your whole life? Isn't your entire life the dialogue? Isn't that the whole thing? It's not like Hashem never talks back. It's that Hashem never stops talking. This is Hashem speaking to you. Like quite literally. I could say anything right now and that would be what you're supposed to hear. It's a wild thing. It's not me. It's just you're there. You chose to be here. Somebody who wasn't supposed to hear whatever's coming through this tonight isn't here. That's how it works. If you're present. That only works if we allow ourselves to come to this place and into this space. And I think that's what we're doing. I think that's what Sukkot is really for. It's this opportunity to go back to joy. We read Koheles on Sukkot. That always used to be funny to me because it's like everything's meaningless, everything's meaningless. Zman simchasenu. And we're like, somebody once said, we are meaning-making machines. Jewish people are. We make meaning out of everything. Well, we both drank at the same time. You know what that means? And this gematria of drinking with this, it's like everything is part of everything, right? And yet everything is meaningless. Kol hevel havalim. Everything's meaningless. And why we read that at the happiest time? And the answer is, yeah, that's the happiest. You are one step from despair and one step from liberation when you realize that all the stuff out there is meaningless. What a thing. Because if we're still chasing something out there to give us joy, you can't have it. It's the one thing you can't have if you're chasing it out there. It doesn't exist out there. I had a chavrusa with a certain individual who's a billionaire. You meet really interesting people when this is what you do. And I think all teachers know that. Anyone who's a teacher, if they're teachers in this room, you meet the most wonderful and amazing individuals along the way. And this is a person who, when I first met with him, we sat down and he said, okay, Rabbi, teach me something. Billionaires tend to be eclectic and sometimes demanding. He's like, teach me something. And it sounded more like Dance Monkey. Like that's how it felt in the moment. So I said, I want to share with you an idea about happiness. He said, no. I said, why not? He said, I don't believe in happiness. I'd never even heard that sentence before. I didn't know what that means. He said, what do you mean you don't believe in happiness? He said, some people are born happy, some people are born unhappy. That's the end of the conversation. Teach me something else. Talk about trauma, right? There's some scars in there. And I was young and foolish. And I said, nope, I'm going to teach you about happiness. So he was very unhappy about that. And he expressed as much for a good half an hour. And the person who connected me to this person said, so how did it go? I said, I don't think it went the way that you think it was going to go. And he said, why not? I was like, well, you could talk to him. And I was right. And for a year and a half, this guy didn't want to talk to me anymore. Like it was like, no, I don't want to talk to you. And then by some hashgacha, and I have no idea how it worked out this way, he ended up getting one of my books and ended up reading the book. And then we started learning again, and he said, your book changed my life. I now understand what happiness is. I now understand I lived the last 70 plus years of my life running in the wrong direction. He was like, can we talk about happiness? Pretty amazing. I was moved by the fact that you can be in your 70s and it's like you still get something new and your whole life can still continually change and evolve. And this is like amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing to see. But that's Koheles. And that's why we read it now. Because if you really want to be happy, we have to let go of our attachment to something out there is going to make me happy. The feeling of then I'll be okay. Then I'll be okay. You have permission from me, henceforth, you have permission to be okay from now on. You're allowed. You're allowed to be okay when things are good. You're allowed to be okay when things are bad. And that's all under the gather of, that's the gam in gam zulatova. Yeah, we say gam zulatova. Gam means even though sometimes it doesn't feel good and it is bad, but hold space that it's also good. Like that's also okay. That you're not feeling okay. Right? This year, we went through things that people shouldn't have to go through. Sons, daughters, mothers, husbands, wives, grandparents, people went through things this year that we shouldn't have to go through because of the pain that it is. And that's okay. Like that, we have to be able to say, okay. It's okay to be in pain. It's okay to feel afraid. It's okay. It's okay to think, should I sleep in the sukkah this year? Yeah? For those who sleep in the sukkah. You can have that thought. That's allowed, right? It's scary. That's a totally normal thing to think. You're also allowed to feel like, I feel great. I don't know why people are making such a big deal out of sleeping outside. I hear lots of different like that's okay also. It's all under the box of, well, we're showing up as our true and authentic selves. And maybe I'll close with one last thought, a story. Rav Moshe Shapiro, is that so? People are familiar with Rav Moshe Shapiro. He was a Rebbe of mine, and also someone who I had the privilege of spending some time with. And if I go like all the way back, like almost 20 years ago, I remember sitting in a shir, and someone had quoted him as saying that there's a big yesod in Torah, that the first time something shows up in the Chumash, it speaks to its nature and to its essence. Reb Tzadok says it, the Arizal says it, there's a Ramban like that the first time you see something in the Torah, there's Gemara like that also, it talks about its essence. And if you really, it's like the DNA, right, or the source code for the big idea of whatever is there. And being in my first year in yeshiva, I was like, okay, gotta find that first time it says simcha. Like where we talk about simcha, like that's what we're here, right? Like everybody wants to be happy, right? You can't talk to anybody who doesn't want to be happy. Like, what's the secret to happiness? Anybody know? First time it says simcha in the Torah? Earlier? Earlier. It's hard. Okay. First time it says simcha, Yaakov Avinu had ran away from Lavan's home. And Lavan chases after him in the middle of the night. And when he catches him, he says, why did you run away in the middle of the night? Had you told me you were going to leave, I would have sent you b'simcha. Lavan? He's probably lying. Like I could not like this. That is the moment, this big picture moment of like the fiery speech between Lavan and Yaakov in the middle of the night. Like, what on earth is there? So I went to my Rebbe, who's brilliant and is holding in all of Torah and Nigla and Nister and everything, and I asked him this question, and he looked at me, he goes, that is a great question. I don't know. That was the first time I heard a rabbi tell me, I don't know. So in the same moment, I felt this incredible sadness and deep respect. I was like, you can say I don't know, and you know a lot. So I was inspired. But it put me on this mission. And so a year or two later, there was a big Rav Aaron Feldman, Rosh Hashiva of Ner Yisrael, Baltimore. He was in Israel, and I happened to be around him, and he was giving a class on Simcha at the time. So I went over to him, and I asked him this question. Lavan, Middle of the night, Yaakov's running away. What's going on? Simcha, first time, DNA, secret happiness. He goes, that is a great question. I don't know. So, looks like most of us here are from America or know something about America, but there's this game called baseball. So I feel like 3 strikes you're out. Like there had to be someone who understood and who knew. And like a year or two after that was by a bris, and Rav Moshe Shapiro Zatzal was the sandik, and I was like, I'm going to catch him. We're going to get it. And I ran over to him after the bris and I said, do you have a moment for a question? He said, sure. And I asked him the question, Simcha, first time, this. And he grabs my arm, and his face lit up. I mean, like ear to ear. He was so happy. I've never seen somebody so happy to get a question. And he said, that is such a good question. And I got so scared when he said it like that. And he's like, do you want to know the answer? I was like, yeah. He's like, okay. He's like, you have to realize how important your question is. I was like, I think it's a good question. He said, you know, Yaakov Avinu had just spent 22 years living with Lavan. That's what just had happened. And when he got there, Yaakov's major midah is, MS, right? Tiferes, truth, MS. And he was living with a Ramai. And Rashi tells us, the Medrash tells us, that when he got there, he made a decision that just like Lavan's going to be a Ramai with me, I'm going to be a Ramai with him. If you're going to be a trickster with me, I'll be a trickster with you. And that was Yaakov's test a lot in his life, was could he bend the truth for a higher truth, right? Very often he found him in this position. But you know how much that hurts? You know how painful that is? When you're one way and the world forces you to be different? When you're essentially forced into Lavan, which is a lie. It's an alma de shikra. It's an alma de peruda. It's not real. It's not true. And he said, the pasuk says, Or zarua letzadik, ule yishrei leiv simcha. If you want simcha, you have to have a straight heart. He says, and what's a straight heart? A straight heart is someone who's in alignment with who they are. That they don't have to pretend to be anything else anymore. He said, what you were watching in that moment, when you see simcha express itself, is Preidas Yaakov from Lavan. It's the separation of Yaakov from Lavan, and it's him moving into himself, saying, I'm finished being a liar in this world. I'm finished being someone because of someone else. I'm finished not living in accordance to my truth, literally truth, the capital T truth. And he said, I can't do that anymore. And it's in that moment where simcha is expressed at the deepest level, is it a return to self. And that's why, psukim later, moments later, Yaakov gets a new name. He becomes Yisrael because he goes Yashar El. He goes straight back to God. He's back in alignment with this higher self. He goes to this higher space. And he said that's because the secret of happiness is being yourself. That's the secret. You don't have to be anything for anyone. You don't have to do anything in that sense. You want to? That's beautiful. There's a mitzvah to? Amazing. But you don't have to perceive yourself as being not okay when you're not. He says when you go into that space, that's how we find joy. So as we're sitting here a couple of days before Zman Simchasenu, at a time where we could use a lot of simcha, and take a moment just to meditate on my final thoughts on Yom Kippur yesterday. I was sitting in the room. I was sitting in the very back of the shul, and I saw everyone, like the entire shul. And my feeling was, this is Klal Yisrael. This is Am Yisrael. And Klal Yisrael deserves Geula. Klal Yisrael deserves Yeshua. Klal Yisrael deserves to be happy. We've been holding on for a really long time. And it's okay. And we should be blessed that this year, as we move into Sukkot, it should be a time of incredible meaning and depth, but quiet. Not quiet from the noise. I want us to dance and to sing and to celebrate what it means to be alive, to really celebrate what it means to be alive. But the only way to celebrate life is to quiet down the noise that keeps us separate. We don't need to be separate. Not separate from each other, not separate from Hashem, and at the deepest level, not separate from ourselves. So we should have that bracha, and we should overflow. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.